Welcome to Meet the Disruptors, 2 days of free online events exploring key market challenges brought to you by Ditto, the B2B tech marketing practice. And thank you for joining our panel discussion, Invenica in Action with Vodafone. This afternoon, we'll explore how telcos can go beyond the edge to explore decentralized digital identities, digital communities, adaptive cybersecurity, Internet of Things products, and enhanced customer experience. We've got a mixture of slides to take us on our journey, and please visit ditto.tv/MTD straight after this webinar ends for a digital hangout with our panel, me, the moderator, and the other audience members. So first, some introductions. I'm Mike Richardson, COO of Ditto, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's session. I'm joined this afternoon by Gareth Mee, CEO and founder at Invenica, and David Palmer, blockchain lead for IoT at Vodafone. Just a little on me. I've had over 10 years experience in digital marketing, specializing in content, SEO, paid media, and social media. I've been with Ditto for 2 years, focusing on insurtech and insurance, and developing content for clients including webinars, white papers, case studies, podcasts, and video. I'm also an associate of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. So if I turn to Gareth now, could you please introduce yourself, Gareth?
I certainly can. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Gareth Mee. I'm the proud founder and CEO of Invenica. A little bit on Invenica. We're an emerging technology systems integrator and consultancy based in London, but with a team of customers and a distributed team throughout Europe and even further afield. We have 15 years of experience applying innovative technology to help our customers achieve their business outcomes and solve their challenges. And myself, with over 20 years of IT business delivery experience, I'm responsible for the strategic and commercial direction of the business.
Fantastic. And turning to David, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David. I've been in Vodafone for 10 years, working in the Internet of Things, formerly known as M2M, and in blockchain for the last 3 years, looking at how specifically digital technologies can enhance or augment the IoT and smart city solutions that we provide.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be moderating today, and thank you for taking part in today's discussion and sharing your insights. A note to the audience, this webinar is being recorded, and you can enter any questions you have for either Gareth or David in the GoToWebinar side panel. We'll be stopping this session as close to 4:40 p.m. as possible, at which point we encourage you all to take part in a digital hangout taking place at ditto.tv/MTD. So I'll start by explaining the format. To start this afternoon, I'll give a short overview of the topic. We'll then talk about blockchain in telco and media. We'll look at Vodafone's activities in the IoT marketplace. Next, we'll discuss smart cities and smart citizens. There will be time at the end for audience questions. So again, if you have any, please submit them into the GoToWebinar panel. And then the panel will sum up with one closing comment each, and we'll move on to the digital hangout. So let's talk about actually delivering innovation, because we can talk endlessly about the potential for these emerging technologies, but which products are making it to the marketplace and really making a difference? In late 2019, Gartner's hype cycle for blockchain technologies showed that blockchain is sliding into the trough of disillusionment, showing that blockchain technologies to be showing most blockchain technologies to be 5 to 10 years away. So of all the thousands of pilot schemes and proof of concepts happening, what is actually likely to make it to production? IoT implementations continue to proliferate and scale up. Companies are increasingly experimenting with combined Internet of Things and blockchain projects. But how will technology solve the challenges driven by volumes and complexity of IoT devices and applications? And then looking at specific IoT implementations, smart cities are no longer just about optimized traffic patterns, parking management, efficient lighting, or improvements to the public works. And we'll look today at where Gareth and David believe technology can play a significant part in improving the lives of our smart citizens. So let's start by looking at blockchain in telco and media. We've seen and talked a lot recently about proof of concepts and the use cases in telco and media industry, but where can blockchain really make a difference to businesses in this industry? And I'll start with Gareth.
Okay, yeah, fine. Mike, I'm going to actually answer the question specifically related to blockchain. However, My view is that whilst talking about the impact on the telecoms and media industry, blockchain doesn't necessarily stand alone, and in fact it will be convergence of emerging technologies. Talked about them before: IoT, 5G, edge computing, data analytics, that will have the greatest impact on business in this sector. And indeed cross industries, where businesses will partner to provide or offer common services. But coming back to blockchain specifically, and blockchain in telco and media, as we know, and you've already alluded to, communication service providers have been working out the best application of blockchain for some time now, 2 years plus, and we've seen numerous and a vast number of proofs of concepts and pilots. In my view, however, there's probably 3 distinct areas where we'll see the greatest impact. The first is related to brand new products and services. And first of all, I'll talk about consumer products and services. So I think it will underpin some of the work, and we're seeing this currently related to loyalty programs, device insurance, peer-to-peer payments even. And there's already companies that have implemented peer-to-peer payments based on blockchain in the telco sector. And essentially, this is the start of potentially the telco industry offering financial services and becoming a digital bank. Services which the telcos or the CSPs are probably well placed to offer. Save the regulation, but if in the last few years we've seen a plethora of startups and challenger banks, digital banks, secure licensing, and if they can do that, then I'm sure a global telco operator will have no problem doing so also. Another example of consumer product service, and again we've touched on this in previous shows or events, is digital identity and the use of digital identity to allow sovereign identity, where the consumer is controlling their own identity. And indeed, this is a building block for the former case study that I just highlighted. Moving, of course, and I'm sure David is going to allude to this during his conversation. There's the many services and products that the telcos are exploring from an enterprise perspective. How can blockchain be combined with other emerging technologies to provide services to their enterprise customers, whether that be supply chain applications or logistics? The second area is where there can the CSPs can derive significant improvements to their current business processes, driven by cost savings, regulation, and corporate social responsibility. An excellent example of that is supply chain. And cross-industry, that's probably the greatest area or uptake of blockchain. So we've seen implementations across manufacturers and retailers, and that's where you can gain significant operational efficiencies across your supply chain, and where it's easy for partners to collaborate for a common goal. The third is solving problems and challenges arising from the growth in the new product and service offerings that both consumer and enterprise businesses within operators and telcos are launching. And perhaps the biggest one, and again we've talked about it in the earlier webinars today, is IoT, and it's how blockchain can play a part in the sheer complexity and volume of both devices and solutions. How do we onboard devices and service providers? How do we ensure efficient and accurate billing processes? And how do we ensure the security of data transfer between devices? So those are the 3 distinct areas where I think telcos and media businesses are going to benefit from, probably most immediately and soonest.
Fantastic. And I mean, David, Gareth talked a lot there about not just blockchain, but the combination of different technologies. Where do you think blockchain can really make a difference to the telco media industry? And is it blockchain, or is it a blockchain and the combination?
I mean, let's look at the history of blockchain and why it came about, and it was largely to do with people disillusioned in 2008 with the current financial system and wanting to take control back. Wanting to have a decentralized currency which didn't depend on banks, which didn't depend on middle or intermediary authorities to do that. And if we look at where we are now, the technology has obviously been adopted by a number of industries, mostly in fintech, to transform processes, to automate them. But really, where it makes a difference is where you provide trust, and where you have a trust layer. You can automate processes. It's as simple as that. If you look around society now, a lot of what we have to do with our ID, showing our passports, showing our driver's license, it's all about authentication, validating who you are, because there's no trust. Where blockchain steps in to provide that trust layer, it provides an opportunity to automate processes, right? Is that enough to make a difference in industry? Probably no, because as well as saving costs, there's a lot of emphasis in industries now on getting additional revenues and new business opportunities. And to that end, for telco specifically, I think the discussion is around, how can blockchain help us transform a CSP into a digital, a connectivity service provider into digital service provider? How can it help to transform, IoT, Internet of Things, into the Internet of Value or the Bank of Things? And it comes back to fintech, digital technologies. As Gareth said, things like blockchain, IoT, 5G. When these things come together, you have a lot of power, because what you have is a trust layer in blockchain, which can knit industries together in a way that's never been done before. And through the trust layer, allow for frictionless, automated processes and customer journeys, and in a way that's not there before, that hasn't been there before. Which I think will spawn a whole new dynamic of new industries, where the barriers, where, for example, we talk about telcos, we talk about banks, we talk about retailers, we talk about logistics companies. I think with blockchain being able to bridge stakeholders and businesses across these industries, something that's quite exciting is a new dynamic of hybrid companies, which are sort of crossing barriers, which I think will change industry. From being defined as telco and bank and retail, to sort of more general companies, which are playing to the strength of their resources and their competitive advantages in different ways. I mean, I could go on if you want me to, but maybe
yes,
I'll
no,
end it there.
happy for you to. Yeah, sorry, interrupted.
Yeah, I mean that's it. So I think specifically, blockchain, IoT, 5G is exciting. 5G with low latency, sort of connectivity, gives rise to things like automation level 4. When you start combining that with AI, there's a lot of excitement when you start pushing these things together. Which could sort of help to bridge the new shared economy that's coming up with the economy of things that I referred to earlier. But there's a number of questions, so I'll probably hold back and and leave it there.
But it's sort of it's interesting, because I'll stay with you, David, because it leads into my next question, which is, telco is the second biggest industry behind finance regarding blockchain adoption. And I feel like you've sort of touched on this, talking about the trust layer and the merging of maybe verticals. But of all the emerging technologies out there, why this interest in blockchain specifically?
I think it's, as I said, it has the ability to form a trust glue that can allow different industries to come together in a way where interests are protected to form new business. And you think about it, why have banks not become retailers? Why have retailers not become banks? Why have telcos not transitioned into different industries? Part of it has been, there have been natural barriers to entry with with being able to get into these industries, but part of it has been the technology and the way the economy's been. I think with the new aspects of decentralized economy, decentralized finance coming in now, I think those, as I said, those barriers will change. I think you'll start to see more dynamic industries, telcos, banks, etc., coming together to form new business, and I think that's that's something to be really excited about. But just one thing on blockchain. So you mentioned earlier some of the industry analysts sort of talking about the hype cycle and the time it will take to for blockchain to come to fruition. And I actually agree with them. I think part of the problem is that we talk about blockchain as if it's a technology on its own. I think Gareth hit on this. It's not a technology on its own. Blockchain is is a technology which is is forming a trust anchor, but needs to be augmented with other digital technologies and also core backbone technology. So to that end, I mean, we'll probably talk about this a bit later, but certainly from our approach, we're playing to our strengths in telco, making sure that we're leveraging our network, leveraging our SIM technology, leveraging our IoT platform, all of the security and trust that's associated with that, but focusing on blockchain only where it adds value, where it augments a solution. And primarily that's in the trust layer and the finance layer.
Fantastic. And Gareth, did you have any sort of thoughts related to what David's just said?
I think David summed it up beautifully, actually. But emphasis with the emphasis on trust, and also the emphasis on the use of the technology to solve challenges that arrive or are derived from other areas. So I alluded to it before, in related to the answer to the first question. How can we use blockchain to provide that trust layer, for example, to solve problems related to the launch of new product and service in the IoT space? Or how can it provide trust between partners that inherently before are competitors and don't trust each other, or a trust layer across cross industry, so that those industries can collaborate to offer new services. So yeah, and that has started to happen, regardless of whether blockchain is the anchor or not. There are businesses out there that are working cross industry, and we're going to see more of that. But we're going to see more of that provided by an ecosystem of partners, for example.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Gareth. I mean, I think part of the problem so far has been because it has been seen as a revolution, where we've had this new digital finance. They wanted to disintermediate the whole fintech sector. Blockchain has existed on its own. You go to the meetups, they have blockchain applications, and the issue we've had is that it doesn't scale. We see that with Bitcoin, we see that with Ethereum, which is now migrating to a sort of new proof of stake version, but it hasn't scaled to the sort of levels for IoT with sort of 100 billion devices forecast by 2030. To have something that can broker transaction and broker trust and authenticate at that scale cannot be done the way blockchain platforms have been designed, or public blockchain platforms have been designed to this date. So I think what the interesting thing, I think this is really interesting, that we're starting to see here is we're starting to see the convergence of traditional established backbone technologies like telco networks, like telco authentication, like banking infrastructure, with blockchain, where blockchain is coming in to augment where it makes a difference. And I think where you start to have that sort of convergence, you start to have scale, you start to have trust, you start to have the ingredients you need for blockchain to really take off and make a difference. And I think let's watch that going forwards, because that is where I'm starting to see some breakthrough now.
Brilliant, and again, David, thank you for setting me up for my next question so wonderfully. But of the innovations and projects, I mean, this is really getting to the meat of it now. The pilots in flight, the projects, and the innovations. What's actually likely to make it to production, and why? And I think I'll start with Gareth this time.
Yeah, and that's it's a great question. It's the crystal ball question, but I think we know enough now, right? There's been a lot of exploration and innovation around a whole host of use cases within the industry. I think, in all honesty, for me, whilst there's some interesting initiatives, and I was listening to a webinar yesterday, which was hosted by CBAN, talking about roaming, and we've talked about the telco roaming use case for a long time now. There are economic benefits to the partners that are involved in that consortium that traditionally probably wouldn't have trusted each other's. And it's encouraging to hear that potentially they will have some basic use cases in production by the end of 2020. However, coming back and actually answering your question, I think, like other industries, the use of blockchain will probably be not instantly realized, but most prevalently, or path to market will be quickest in applications such as supply chain, right? Because it's proven, other industries have done it, and it adds benefit. And then, related to probably solutions that the enterprise, the division that David works for example, for Vodafone, is supplying to their customers in consortium based initiatives. So again, potentially supply chain or logistics, etc. David's probably better placed to comment on that because he's involved in those initiatives, but that's probably what I think.
Great. So, I mean, turning to you, David, same question. What's likely to make it to production and why? David, are you there? You may have dropped away.
Yeah, sorry, I'll probably start off by saying that there are already blockchain projects in production. So one of them being Bitcoin, the other being Ethereum, and there's a number of these platforms that are already out there. So I think that's the key thing, is that there are already a number of projects out there. The question is that they're not really spanning industry, so they haven't disintermediated in any significant way the traditional things that they came in to replace. So, for example, Bitcoin was intended to sort of replace the financial system, but it hasn't done that. Instead, it's a store of value. Ethereum, with the smart contracts and applications, was really meant to become an incubator for small businesses and innovation ideas. To an extent, it has achieved that. But these are live. When you translate that into industry, we're seeing indicators from those sort of blockchain decentralized applications, that insurance, digital money, fintech, and the smart contract elements seem to be areas that are striking a note and able to sort of add value. Also, going back to the point that Gareth made, digital ID, I think is an application that will make a big difference, that is waiting for the buy-in and support from key industries. Clearly, finance, banking, government need to come on board for these things to really make a difference, to replace things like passports, driver's license and other credentials. But it is something that will, if you just look at COVID, for example, part of the challenge you have with COVID is to, how do you prove you don't have it? How do you prove that you do have it? How do you prove who you've been into contact with? How can you use that information to gain access to certain premises or buildings or other other functionality? And digital ID, if we had it right now functioning, would have been absolutely ideal for the COVID crisis, and helping us to treat it and helping us to also transition from that. So I'm seeing digital. I'm putting money on digital ID to be a key one. And also, I think another sort of component, so I won't go into the finished products, but another component or capability that I think will make a big difference will be smart contracts, smart money. If you look at it, one of the things that that we've seen again, in this strange time we're in called COVID, is no one's using cash. Cash is gone. I mean, most organizations or retail outlets that you approach now are saying, right, online payments only. Now, when you start adding the sort of smart contract and the logic, programmable money that you can see that in the world of commerce that could really disrupt and a lot of what's going on at the moment. And I'm seeing that whole sort of money, programmable money, smart contract could sort of have a very big difference. Now taking that to telco. What blockchain projects will make it in telco. I think Gareth hit on some of them. So what's very, you're taking all of those components I described, the smart contracts, the sort of trust layer, the wallets, all of these things that come with a traditional blockchain capability. Supply chain is obviously one, when you combine that with things like IoT sensors and connectivity that start to become very interesting. And we're starting to see that a lot of people and industries want to know where their goods or their assets are, so that not only they can manage them more efficiently, but also they can try and tap into productivity and monetization opportunities via sort of shared economy or economy of things marketplaces that will spring up. And I think those are sort of interesting things. For us, I mean, some of the things we're working on leveraging our SIM-based blockchain technology on our IoT platform are really things around the economy of things and how we can add, how we can really add monetization opportunities for our customers. And I think those are two areas I think will make a difference. The monetization opportunities driven by business and their demand for additional efficiencies and revenue opportunities. Supply chain, because I think it's just a natural fit to IoT and blockchain technologies. And I think these two things are ones to watch out for.
Fantastic. And I mean, we've sort of started mentioning IoT, which is, Vodafone are incredibly active in the IoT marketplace. And so staying with you, David, I mean, what differentiates Vodafone from the rest of the players in that market? And how are you using innovation to sort of differentiate yourself?
I think it's a really, really good question, and we touched on it before. So I'll start off by saying a few things, right? So we're transitioning. So I think the industry is transitioning from connectivity service provider to digital service provider. The IoT industry is moving from Internet of Things to Internet of Value. There's a transformation going on. Telcos are moving from telco to techco. Right, so going back to my earlier points, the barriers to entry, the traditional sort of demarcation lines of the industry, are under threat. That they are transforming. We are going through a transformation, and that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. And I think what differentiates Vodafone is that Vodafone are actively moving from telco to techco. We're actively moving from Internet of Things to economy of things. And we're embracing the move from connectivity service provider to digital service provider. And this involves a restructuring. One of the things you may have heard of is Digital Telco Initiative in Vodafone, where the whole organization is going through a digital transformation. The way we work, which is evident in the COVID crisis, it wasn't a big deal for us because we have this sort of capability to work digitally and remotely. But even in terms of the structure, the priorities, the way risk is managed, the organization is really embracing the sort of digital revolution. And I think the other advantage for Vodafone is sheer size. If you look at sort of blockchain and digital, I always say to people, one of the beautiful things about Vodafone's structure is that we have a group, which is a centralized sort of entity, and then you have opcos and partners all around the world. And you start sort of look at it, and it's ideal for blockchain technologies. It's ideal for digital technologies, that sort of structure and that global reach. And I think the difference is that Vodafone are now leveraging these things to move forward and embrace the challenge and embrace the opportunity that digital presents.
Fantastic. How, just turning to Gareth now, I mean, how will technology help solve the challenges driven by the volumes and complexity of IoT devices and applications?
I think, first of all, we probably should touch on some of the challenges. David's already alluded to them when he was talking previously about infrastructure and blockchain. Blockchain needs to scale vastly in order to handle the future complexities or volumes that we're expecting in the IoT space. But you've got to start, right? So some of those challenges are things like speed and latency, security, device to device transactions, managing billing and data consumption and reconciliation of that in a far more complex world. The technology that is evolving, again, we've alluded to this earlier, that will help solve those challenges, but by no means will do that fundamentally today. It is 5G, new infrastructure with higher speeds, edge computing, allowing us to compute that allows us to increase the speed and latency of applications on the edge of the network, that will allow far more immersive experiences. For example, you could take a virtual reality, digital twin representations of manufacturing or power plants, for example. So we're seeing a whole plethora of startups and consortium initiatives in this area. And that we will then also be able to, we alluded to blockchain before, and the trust layer and being accurately and transparently able to track device data using blockchain. And again, we've already touched on digital identity, which blockchain potentially based digital identity that will unlock a whole host of commercial services. I think for 5G is early, yes, okay, and all the operators are promoting it to the consumer market space. But I think we're going to require, and we're starting to see it, and David will allude to it, but that needs to be reinforced by real business case adoption. So they can buy into it. So what am I talking about? Potential catalysts to do that. So smart cars and the need to compute on the edge. I've already alluded to virtual reality, whether that be in a consumer-based scenario, for example, football games using virtual reality, or whether it be in a business enterprise space, manufacturing and power plants, etc. So we're starting to see that there are plenty of challenges, but we're starting to see plenty of headway with new emerging technologies which are being applied to solve some of those challenges.
And just staying with you, Gareth, on that, I mean, I think you've probably alluded to a number of them already, but how are Invenica working with their customers in the IoT space, and what sort of problems are you solving there?
Right now, I mean, we're doing an awful lot of work currently with Vodafone in the consumer IoT space. And actually, this is closely linked to the work that we're also doing for smart cities, and probably very topical now. So we currently have teams that are vested in finding new ways to improve customer lifestyles, their well-being, health, and convenience with smart devices. We've actually helped define a process to assess devices and vendors. Both indirect and direct value for the end customer. And we'd be responsible for designing the integration and rollout of these various Vodafone markets. In a lot of instances, we're putting a lot of time and effort in to create differentiation and value add for Vodafone by investigating, for example, the application of data science or even blockchain to help improve and enhance customer experience. A great example of that is security, which we've already alluded to, or new features indeed, integration with health or insurance platforms, which helps them differentiate, which, as David alluded to before, is a massive focus for Vodafone. They want to become a digital end-to-end digital solutions provider, and they're making rapid strides to do that, both in the consumer and enterprise space. So it's not just a transformation of their own business, but it's a transformation of the offerings that they offer their customers. Right.
Brilliant. I mean, David, do you have any, that sort of Gareth talking about the way Invenica are helping you from your perspective on that sort of partnership?
I think partnerships are key going forwards. Companies like Invenica and others are being embraced across the organization to bring new ideas, to help us to bridge sort of knowledge gaps, skill gaps, but also to bring insight into what's happening in different areas and give a different perspective. So I think some of these things are key. Digital ID, we keep going back there, but I agree with Gareth. I think it's a critical development that was done for consumer on the consumer side there. Just going back as well to your question on the complexity in IoT and how technology can maybe help with that. I'd just like to say that one of the challenges that we did manage to bridge, with the advent of our GDSP global service data platform for IoT, was to basically bridge the challenge of providing a device or a thing with a SIM, with the ability to have global reach. And the beauty of that platform, it has a number of features, but at its core, it provides a roaming SIM, so the SIM's always roaming, which has global reach, and that's helped us to provide with our customers global solutions, which I think is a key foundation. Other things of note, NB-IoT, narrowband IoT, or LPWA, is solving problems of the increasing demands on battery and being able to use the battery life of a device, and optimize that, but also have connectivity as and when needed. I think that's an important challenge. 5G coming to IoT also starts to meet the increasing challenges we're having from the automotive drive for automation and autonomous mobility. And indeed, when you sort of look at the shared mobility challenge, that's where some of the things we're doing with our digital asset broker marketplace and the wallet on the SIM, the secure element on the SIM, this sort of SIM-based approach, which adds the capability for devices to be able to transact with each other and authenticate with each other and have provenance of data. These things are meeting the challenges that are being presented by industry and governments going forward. So I just wanted to mention that. And I think the biggest challenge in complexity is going to be about monetization. How can we help not just industry but governments to unlock monetization opportunities in the Internet of Things, economy of things world? And that's it. We haven't necessarily done that now. We provided a capability for these things to be connected. But I think going forwards, where you have billions of these devices and smart city services all interacting, all providing data or demanding data, you have a real-time data opportunity there. Where that data can be transacted real time, where the service can be transacted real time, which transcends the current contracting that we have at the moment, which is an area I see technologies like IoT, blockchain, AI coming together to solve those problems going forwards.
Great. Now, I am conscious of time, so we're going to touch on smart cities and smart citizens. Gareth, could you just give us a sort of quick 60-second rundown of what is a smart city and how do we become smart cities?
I was going to quote a definition that we've used in the past, but I won't do that, right? And the reason I was going to quote it is because it focuses on the smart city and the enablement of the smart city using technology. But what it actually missed, or what we missed, right, was why. And ultimately, in my opinion, it's very simple. You know, we are trying to make smart cities or enable smart cities using technology, all of the emerging technologies we've been talking about during this conversation, for the betterment of its citizens, right? So their health and well-being, their economics, their security, convenience and lifestyle. That's it. So it's the enablement of smart cities, if you like. Oh, smart citizens, I apologize.
Fantastic. So turning to David, I mean, my next question is, where do you genuinely believe technology can play a significant part in improving the lives of our smart citizens?
That's a really good and timely question on the back of COVID and what we faced. Yeah, I think it. Yeah, so I think it comes down to this, right? We have three entities there. So you have a connected city, largely built around connectivity, shared services, and sensors. And a lot of the smart city models are sort of moving and trying to leverage those capabilities. And you have a connected citizen, which has the ability to tap in to those services, but also provide data. And then you have, overlaying that the Internet of Things, soon to be the economy of things, which is about connected devices, sensors, starting to play a role in that world. I think it's two things. So I think data, the sort of data exchanges between cities and citizens can provide a better, more tailored service for citizens and enable smart cities with scarce resources to use them more efficiently. So you have that with sort of mobility on demand models, where buses and trains, start to tap in with things like network as a sensor, and other volumetrics to tailor the volume and service times to suit actual on the ground demand people where they are. And then of course on top of that you start to have sort of shared mobility models. You've seen the start of that with Uber, but it will go a lot further, where as we have more on-demand data, we'll start to have more on-demand, more tailored services, in the mobility sector, in the service sector. So I think the key to it is data, and it's about sharing resources and data between citizens and smart city and their infrastructure. But using a word or two words that Gareth mentioned earlier, is that when you overlay data science on that, i.e. when you overlay the ability near real time to be able to apply an algorithm to the data between citizens, cities, and the economy of things, then you can start to have intelligence of that, and smart cities, smart citizens, and IoT can start to move together in a dynamic way that we haven't seen before. And I think that will improve the efficiency of the cities, but also significantly improve the experience, or I'll say the customer or citizen experience in a smart city.
Great. And I mean, same question to Gareth. Where do you believe technology can play a part for our smart citizens? And maybe if you could just touch on some examples as well of some projects.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm just going to break it down into some areas that we've discussed, and these are more benefits to the citizens, right? So I've focused on what we can bring in terms of benefit. And David's right. This has been hugely highlighted in the as a result of COVID-19 and the world pandemic. But we've had to address things like sustainability. And good examples of that are food and renewable energy. There's a great case study in the UK currently where a business called Low Carbon Farming, for example, is using the heat produced by sewage works to fuel massive, huge indoor greenhouses. And this will ultimately result, once they've set up their 30-odd sites that they're planning in the UK, that we will become a gross producer of things like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers, etc., which I find amazing. But that initiative was ongoing already. Renewable energy. households will become providers of energy. We will provide energy from solar panels. We provide energy spare from car batteries, bike batteries, whatever it may be, which ultimately can set up well, moving on to my second point, which is economics, potentially secondary markets for things like energy, where not only businesses can benefit from spare capacity, but consumers can, homeowners can, which I find fascinating. Very topical now is health and well-being. Things like air quality monitoring, something that my CTO and staff was very passionate about. The reduction of CO2 emissions, looking at how the whole world has moved to online delivery, particularly now. But how do we the biggest carbon footprint is in the last mile delivery. So how do we solve that problem? We should we should move to electric bikes, electric cars. I know in Amsterdam, for example, they use the canal or river network to deliver to local depots, where then delivery drivers pick up on electric bikes or bikes, for example. Housing, how do we make housing affordable? I'll probably allude to that more in because I think we're going to talk about some specific case studies. So I'll come back to that point. All right.
I'm conscious of time. If I turn to David and we talk about some specific case studies, and then we'll try and wrap up by 10:02. So, David, have you got any, talking about smart cities, have you got any sort of projects and where there examples of smart city projects and where they're being implemented?
Yes. So as you know, this is a big area for us. You got things, as Gareth mentioned, things like smart street lighting. You've got waste management projects. Also some specific COVID-related, contact tracing, heat detection. Capabilities which are being implemented into smart city solutions, which are sort of very topical and relevant to the challenge we've just faced, or we are going through with COVID. But yeah, I mean, I think those are some of the sort of key ones that we're looking at, and of course the whole network as a sensor is a sort of big topic in telco and for Vodafone. And this is, of course, where you're using the network to get a sense of what's going on in certain areas, and then combining that, with other capabilities to turn that into intelligence, which can, of course, make a difference to smart citizens' lives, make things easier, but also trigger the right responses at the right time.
Fantastic. I think we'll keep the other use cases for maybe a chat in the digital hangout where we're going to move in a minute. So just briefly, could I have one closing comment from Gareth and David? If there's one thing that you'd like the audience to take away from today's discussion, what would that be? And I'll start with Gareth.
I think very simply, we've talked about the opportunity, or the opportunity that is, the world is changing. Technology is emerging, technology is converging, and there's some massive opportunities out there. But in order to make that happen, we have to do something potentially that we're not used to doing, which is, and particularly in business, which is collaborate. But the beauty is that we potentially have access to some technologies, blockchain being a primary one, that will help us solve that problem, because it will create trust between parties that inherently or necessarily didn't trust each other. And I think for us to really seize these opportunities, whether it be in a smart city, or whether it be providing non-banking companies providing banking services, frictionless services, then we will have to create new ecosystems and collaborate.
Brilliant. And turning to David, your final thought that you'd like the audience to take away today?
I agree totally with Gareth. I think collaboration is key to how we move forwards. I think with barriers to entry being lowered, with the challenges we're facing, as we're seeing, again, I mentioned COVID again, but I think it's important, with challenges like COVID and then now the economic challenges that industries and individuals will face following that, collaboration is key, it's efficient. But also I'd like to say that, the key thing with everything we've mentioned today is that we're going through a period of transformation. In the telco space, in the finance space, in every sector, businesses that have never been online, that have never needed to be connected, smart cities that have never needed to find efficiencies or monetization opportunities are now needing to really examine their business models and their infrastructure to try and identify those and realize those opportunities. So I think the key thing is that we're just at the beginning. I don't think the end of this story has been written. I think we're just starting on this road, and it's really exciting. We're probably going through one of the biggest eras of technology, innovation, change, and revolution that there has ever been, and we all have a part to play in that. And I'd like to continue these discussions. Obviously from a Vodafone point of view, we're leveraging our position to try and help our customers and to provide products that can make a difference. But as Gareth said, this is a interconnected, interoperable initiative that needs us to come together, and I think it'd be really important to keep discussing that. So thank you for this opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you both, David and Gareth, for sharing your insights today. To find out more information about Invenica and the services they provide, for a copy of today's slides, or to discuss any of the topics we've covered, please get in touch on inquiries@invenica.com or visit invenica.com. This session has been recorded, and a link to that video will be shared via email. On screen now, you will see the link to go to. Please go to ditto.tv/MTD straight after this webinar for a digital hangout with our panel, me, the moderator, and the other audience members. And up next, as part of Meet the Disruptors, we've got a chat with the film director Brian O'Malley. So that is the next hour, and that kicks off in about 9 minutes. So until then, just to say thank you very much to David and Gareth, and we'll see you all in a digital hangout. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
David.
Thank you.